All right, y'all. So today we are finally doing this. I've been talking about doing it for so long. I wrote this book, co-wrote this book. I wrote the first rendition of it, and then the second part was after about 30 to 40 hours worth of Zoom meetings with one of my dear beloved friends, Hunter. We wrote my book, and my book is 182 pages. It's called The Three Stages of Scorpio. So here's the 3 stages of Scorpio. So first things first is the book is crazy, guys. So just get ready. This is a really intense kind of like fucked up book. I'm not going to lie to you. I put all my trauma in here, and then I put all my beauty in here. I'm here with my dear friend and travel buddy, Dharma. And Dharma is a G, a legend, a good human. And we're going to be doing some like podcasts in between since we're on the road and traveling. And I'm trying to also hit home the point to all the students in my school where I teach people how to make 10K a month on social media. I need to hit home the point that doesn't need to be perfect. So here's me not being perfect. I'm sitting on a hotel bed. Tomorrow I'm going to be in a whole new freaking place. It might be loud as hell out there. I don't care. I'm still going to show up and I'm going to do this because I've been talking about it and I know it's going to be great and I need to do it. So first, prologue. "Hey, sweetie," said a nurse wearing blue scrubs as she zipped down a hallway with a small metal cart. I smiled at her, doing my best to be polite. The beige and hardwood halls of the Tampa General Hospital were extra busy that day. As I rounded yet another corner, I scanned the room numbers down the straightway. What room was it again? I could not remember for the life of me. I continued walking aimlessly until a soft, somber voice said, "Connor?" I stopped dead in my tracks and turned. Standing in the opening of a small hospital room was a middle-aged woman with curly blonde hair. Her eyes were watery and her face was flushed with grief. "Come in," she said. I followed her lead and stood next to the bed, avoiding the judging gazes of the others in the room. Instead, I kept my eyes on the base of the bed, which was covered in buttons. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, fuck. Holy shit. I kept my eyes on the base of the bed, which was covered in buttons, laden with cables and tubes. I wonder if I can even read this all the way. I stood there for a second, listening to the EKG's slow beep. And after a few moments, I worked up the courage to look up, and I saw her. 17-year-old Katie Golden. Her curly blonde hair lay still against her head, which rested on a light blue pillow. Her soft, beautiful face was pale and stoic, and disfigured teeth poked out from behind her blue lips. It was April 18th, 2017, 2 days after Easter. I had been sober and attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings for almost 6 months. A few days prior, I got the news about Katie. She had seen her ex-boyfriend, Titan, She had seen her ex-boyfriend, Titan, again and overdosed on heroin. Now it was her 3rd day in a vegetative state. I had come to join her family to say goodbye before she was unplugged. For a 17-year-old, I had seen some shit. I've had guns pulled on me, robbed cards, sold pounds of drugs, done pounds of drugs, but this was something else. This wasn't a glorious gangster death. It didn't align with the hard-edged street persona I had been wearing since I was 11. Standing in that hospital room in front of the dying girl I desperately wanted to be my girlfriend crushed my ego. It wiped out my whole act. All I could do was stand there, raw like an exposed nerve. That just as easily could have been me in that bed. And at that moment, I wished it was. I thought I deserved it more than she did. Katie was a sweet cheerleader, piano player, and teenage girl. I was the one racing towards my own death. Part 1. The Scorpion. To protect itself from perceived danger of growth, the scorpion retaliates with the crutches of escapism to numb pain and discomfort. Chapter 1. Roots. My mother, Rhonda Perello, has Sicilian and Tunisian roots. She is the daughter of a first-generation immigrant from Tunisia. My father, Kenneth Keefe, is the son of Hildegard Keefe and Kenneth Keefe. He inherited his Jewish heritage from his mother and has a mix of German, English, and Irish roots on his father's side. His mother, who I always called Moody, which was my grandmother, immigrated to the United States in 1947 with her father and younger sister. In 1950, Moody and my grandmother, Kenneth, or Poppy as I knew him, met. On November 12, 1998, in St. Petersburg, Florida, my mom, accompanied by my dad, gave birth to me at Bayfront Hospital, located just a mile away from Tropicana Field. I was an 8.75 pound baby boy, but boy would I weigh more on my parents than that. That was solely. The naming process required very little effort. My dad, grandfather, and great-grandfather all had the same first and last name, Kenneth Keefe. In the spirit of tradition, that's what they called me too. To avoid confusion, my family has always called me by my middle name, Connor. I got this name from my mom, who was watching the Super Bowl and adored Tom Cruise's son's name. After completing all of the requisite paperwork, my parents brought me back to their home on Pasadena Island. We lived on Pasadena until I was 5. First in a house next to 2 young boys who would become great friends of mine, Alex and Andrew. There's way too much history to even begin to start talking about them, but I love them very much. Alex turned out to be an amazing person, and actually, ironically, he's my accountant now. Well, his accounting firm is. Funny enough, I didn't know about paying taxes after the beginning of my businesses, so I had all of this back taxes that I just acted like didn't exist for 2 years, and he saved my ass. But previously, we used to just be little boys, him and Andrew, his brother, and then sometimes some other kids, eating a lot of food, playing a lot of video games, and eventually smoking lots of weed and more. That's when Alex decided to start doing thousands of push-ups and being on a different path than Andrew and I. Later on, we moved into a house down the road that belonged to my great-uncle Donald. He let us stay there so that I could grow up close to my fraternal grandparents, Moody and Poppy, who had a house across the street on Boca Ciega Bay. The vague impression I have of my mom and dad's relationship during this time is that it was dominated by absolute disgust for one another. I would frequently hear my mother screaming at the top of her lungs, "Kenny!" followed by intense accusations of some minute grievance, most of which were blown totally out of proportion. Can't blame her, she was just extremely mentally disturbed at the time. Thank God she's so strong and amazing now. She's my dearest friend and beloved. My father, being more passive-aggressive than directly confrontational, would bitterly call back, "Now, Rhonda," with a half-hearted attempt at a counter-argument. Sometimes he would be colder. You could say he is as cool as a cucumber, though, typically. He simply doesn't find it necessary to waste his breath. He'd rather just read the paper, do client calls, help somebody out, or go watch sports while drinking a couple IPAs. But yelling and screaming, that basically just isn't even in his blood. I've only ever seen the man scream less than I can count on 2 hands. Best believe the times that he did, I sure as hell deserved it more than you could ever imagine. So after he would find his peace by going out for a drink with friends and watching sports. Because my father was devoted to his successful career as a U.S. diplomat way before I was born, and later a foreclosure defense and bankruptcy lawyer, in my formative years my mother played the role of the traditional disciplinarian. Although she loved me with her whole heart and soul, that is the role she had to play. Considering my dad was very much so, there was no boundaries there. I recall one Christmas when I was so ecstatic to open presents that I woke her up. That morning, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to tell you guys this. That morning, I woke up and sprung out of bed. When I saw all of the enticing prints of wrapping paper underneath the tree, I couldn't contain myself. In my joy, I promptly marched over to my mother's door. "Mom, Mom, 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 Mom," I said like a cracked out and hungry parrot. "It's Christmas, wake up!" I waited eagerly outside her door for a response. The calm of silence in the early Christmas morning only enhanced my determination. "Mom, I want to open presents, come on," I whined. Behind the door I heard a shuffle of bedding. "Connor," she mumbled. She was still half asleep and caught in her haze of her prescription benzos. "Mom, get up," I said, raising my voice. My excitement was turning into impatience. "Connor, let's wait a little bit, honey." "No, I want to open my presents now." "No," I said, "no, that's the end of it." "Connor, go to your room, I'll get Mr. Belt." Oh my God. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you so much. I can't even believe I'm telling this story, but I just know that people can relate to it, so I have to just tell it how it is. My mom is nothing like this. I'm just not even going to let my mom read this or see this, but I know some of you guys can relate to this. That's the only reason why I even bother telling this story, because I definitely don't want my mom to feel any type of like emotions or guilt, because she's been the best mother on planet Earth and father as well. So my heart began pounding at the sound of that name. Mr. Belt was the name of the belt that lived in my mother's closet. He was the chief of justice in our house and proudly served alongside Mr. Spoon and Mrs. Spatula. The gang only ever came out as a last attempt to shut my little bitch ass up. But to make it very clear, it's not like I was beaten senselessly every single day like my mother was. Not at all. You know, I was very lucky, all things considered. "No, please, I just want to open presents," I cried, wailing my open palms onto her door. At that moment, the door whipped open in front of me. My mother towered out the entrance, and her hair still tossed from sleep. In her hand was Mr. Belt, sleek and ready for duty. She grabbed me by the shoulder, walked me to my room, bent me over the bed. "There will only be 10 of these," she said calmly. "It's for your own good." She swung her arm up. Boom! No! Whack! No! Her arm rose again and came down, Mr. Belt in tow. "No, I'm sorry," I pleaded. Whack! Shit! Whack! Fuck! Whack! After 10 lashes, Mr. Belt took the rest of the holiday off, leaving me and my mother with a tense Christmas morning. The whole day I could see the dread in her eyes, the weight of having to do that to her son hanging over her. I'm not telling this story to bitch and moan. Please don't get it twisted. I love both of my parents very much, and not once during my childhood did I doubt their love for me. We actually today have the most healthy, stable, secure relationship ever, and I'm so proud of both of them. My mother meditates, does breath work, goes to the gym. She's actually shredded now. She's 62 years old. I talk to her more than I do any other person. Same with my dad. I call him all the time, and I love him so much, and he was always there for me. I specialize in trauma and have been helping people heal trauma for the last 7 years after healing myself from treatment-resistant PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant addiction, and so on. So I only say all of this just to give you a little bit of clarity of the types of traumas that I had went through. And what I went through, just believe this is only the beginning. This is nothing compared to what you're about to hear later on in this book. I was a ruthless little badass jit, and my parents were only ever trying to do their best. In fact, everyone is always trying to do their best because we operate from our most evolved level of awareness in the present moment. Okay, no, that sounds nice and all, but I think more accountability is necessary. So what I'll say is, it has become common and acceptable to embody mediocrity and evil, and humans innately look around to others to see what's acceptable and okay. Based on this, the whole world's messed up. Rather than doing their best, they're trying to do what everybody else is doing. And everybody else is doing what they're doing, and they're doing, and they're doing, and everybody's doing what they're doing because they're extremely traumatized from generational abuse, confusion, addiction, depression, societal norms, lack of unification with the divine, governmental influence, religious influence, etc. So my parents' love for me was expressed through the means they were conditioned to believe were appropriate for dealing with what society called bad behavior. They disciplined me this way because they wanted me to perform well in the world that they knew. While I understand that my mother did this out of love, practicing ahimsa, nonviolence, is the ultimate way to redirect the behavior of our young. When we use violence to discipline our children, we teach them that violence is a valid way to express disapproval, dissatisfaction, and anger. This pattern could be explored through Plato's cave analogy. Plato's cave tells the story of men held captive by chains facing the cave wall. They've spent their lives there, knowing no reality outside their own shadows cast on the wall. When children grow up in environments where physical discipline is the norm, they're likely to believe that these restrictive chains of conditioning are for their benefit, and that the shadows of violence are the only real way to raise a kid. Wholeheartedly, they believe that the way they were raised is the best way, and so they passed that behavior on to their kids. But fuck that shit. Occasionally, someone comes from outside the cave, being capable of breaking those motherfucking chains. In my life, I've come to call such a being a guru. More on that later. With my dad spending most of his time working and my mom burnt out on pharmaceutical amphetamines and benzodiazepines, the most stable adult figure in my life during this time was my Grandma Moody. While I spent a lot of time with her, I can't recall many specific experiences with Grandma Moody. What remains is the imprint of a loving elderly woman and a few handfuls of hazy childhood memories. We spent most of our time playing with Legos or hanging out in her garden, and she loved to garden. Sometimes it seemed like that's all that she did, and anyone who saw her garden understood why. Behind her house, a winding stone path emerged from a creaky screen door, stitching the two sides of her garden together, leading up to the seawall. The garden, with its various palms, shrubs, perennial flowers, and a few birds of paradise, was an ocean of green, magenta, canary yellow, and orange, much like the sunsets it hosted on clear days. The focal point of the garden was a lemon tree in the right corner, surrounded by a small stone perimeter. Beneath it sat a stone Buddha. I recently learned that Moody had lived just outside of Frankfurt in a town called Offenbach. excuse me, I'm probably not saying that right, during the German Reich. She was 11 when Hitler was appointed the Chancellor of Germany. In the spring of 1944, her mother, Paula, was revealed by a local to the Gestapo as being Jewish. The Gestapo demanded, oh shit, gives me chills. The Gestapo demanded that her husband, Gustav, bring Paula to their local office to hand her over. The couple rode their bikes down to the office where Paula was detained, leaving Gustav effectively a widower and Moody without a mother. Fortunately, Moody and her younger sister, Inga, were only half Jewish and were not taken by the Gestapo. Instead, Moody stayed in Offenbach with her sister and attending a segregated school until she had left to study at the University of Cologne. Towards the end of the war, Moody's father was called to serve in the German army. Not wanting to fight for the same regime that took his wife, he crossed the Western Front and surrendered to the French, like in the middle of the fucking battlefield. Homie, like, literally laid his guns down and just like, yo, I don't want to be here right now. That's exactly what I would do. When the Allies achieved victory in 1945, he was released. After the war, Moody longed to find her mother, but learned that she had died in Auschwitz in 1944. Shortly after, in 1947, the family immigrated to the United States through the Ellis Island. Having learned about my grandmother's past, I feel incredibly blessed to have lived the life that I have. While I've experienced my share of suffering, I can't imagine the fear, dread, and pain of losing a mother to the Holocaust. How fortunate am I to have been born into my life? I could have been anyone. I could have been born in the Congo, where 25.4 million people face food insecurity, or in Palestine, where well over 30,000 children, women, and fathers have been killed, and many more have lost almost everything by sick psychos in the government. Those motherfuckers. If Moody wasn't in the garden, she was painting. She was very talented, and at one point, she even co-owned an exhibit. Every wall in her house was lined with her work. Most of her paintings explored various cultures from around the world. Based on the saintly Asian and Indian subjects in many of her paintings, as well as the stone Buddha in her garden, I think Moody had an affinity for Eastern culture and spirituality. While these were completely foreign to me then, they would later become the foundation of my life. Looking back at the hardships Moody faced gives a lot of context to the expressions in her art. One of her most memorable works is a 5-panel painting that depicted individuals from various regions around the world, all sharing their cultures harmoniously in front of the globe. Perhaps this painting portrayed the world she hoped to see, a world far different from the one that she grew up in. One of my most profound memories of Grandma Moody was her passing. I was 5 years old. My parents took me to a British restaurant and pub called the Horse and Jockey to break the news. We pulled up to the joint in the evening. I saw the navy blue roof and red telephone box and immediately knew where we were. When we lived on Pasadena Island, we used to go there regularly to eat. Inside, we were promptly seated in a wooden booth with red leather seats next to a window. The indistinct chatter of middle-aged men bounced off the hardwood walls. My mom and dad sat down across from me. There was a tense silence as we waited to be served, and after a few minutes, a young, stocky blonde waitress in a black t-shirt approached our table. "Hey guys, welcome to the Horse and Jockey. Is there anything I can get started for you today?" she asked, looking at each of us. "Yeah, I'll have a high lie," my dad said. His voice sounded flatter than usual. "Okay, and what can I get for you, Mom?" "We'll both have water," my mom said, pointing between herself and I. "Alrighty," the waitress said. "Do you think that you guys know what you want to eat?" "I'll have the cottage pie," my dad replies. The waitress scribbled on her pad and turned to my mom. "I'll have the cottage pie too," she said. I perked up and the waitress looked at me. "Me too," I chimed in. Back in the day, I used to eat that. "Alrighty," she said with performative enthusiasm. She clipped her pen to her notepad and walked back toward the kitchen. Once the waitress left, my dad started explaining the history of IPAs to my mom while I fidgeted in my chair and rocking back and forth. In about 15 minutes, the waitress brought our food and we all dove into the steaming mounds of gravy-soaked potatoes, vegetables, and ground beef. When we finished, we sat quietly staring at our empty plates, glancing around the bustling pub. Finally, my father spoke. "Connor, there's something that we need to tell you." His voice cracked a little bit at the end. His eyebrows tensed over his glazed eyes. Noticing he was holding back, my mom stepped in to deliver the news. "God took Moody," she said softly. her eyes glossy like my dad's. What do you mean? I asked. Everyone gets older, and sometimes they have to go back and be with God. No, fuck that. I want Moody, I protested. She's in a better place now, my mom said. Fuck that. I smacked my hands on the table. I want Moody now. I felt a hot rage well up in my chest. It was the kind of anger you get when you can't find your car keys, but way, way more intense. At 5 years old, I didn't have car keys or anything else to lose, but now, Moody, the most warm and loving presence in my life, was gone. Connor, she's with God now, my mom repeated, tears beating in the corners of her eyes. I sat there, resigned and quiet, staring out the window at a little shrub with pink flowers by the curb. Shortly after she passed, we went over to Moody's house to sort her things. I remember wandering through her garden with the family. Though she was gone physically, her essence seemed to linger, emanating from every shrub, flower, palm that she had planted. After drifting aimlessly around the yard, we all gathered at the end of the stone path next to the lemon tree. Underneath the lemon tree, the little Buddha sat, unmoved by the breeze that tickled the low-hanging branches. While she was alive, the tree had been too young to bear fruit, but now it was strung with large, ripe lemons. It felt like one of those perfect moments, the kind where the most loving and harmonious actions just springs up without much thought. Under the beaming Florida sun, we picked fruit from Moody's tree for the first time. This was my first real taste of death. Despite my anger and denial about losing her, Moody's death didn't stir fear in me. I didn't stop to think that death might come for me someday. I never felt that death was real, because it isn't. The soul doesn't die, and much like Moody's garden, we are inseparable from our actions and the fruits that they bear. Our gardens outlive our bodies, and life is eternal. So that's the end of that chapter.